All right, so we are going to jump into a Dominaria United sealed. Now, I usually do between like 0 and 4 sealed events each set. Just sort of depends on how I'm feeling and how much I'm winning. And this is actually my second one. First one, I've got 7 wins, which is rare for me in sealed. But yeah, just checking out our 6 rare slash mythics. So Defiler of Dreams is nice. We got Ivy, which is okay. Nemata, which is fine. The red green rare is just not super supported. So, and then there's also Solkanar, which I'm not sure about. So, moving to triple speed here because I actually had trouble with this build and pondered a whole lot of things. So, we'll make it more concise for this playback. But just scanning over the card quality, highlighting the cards I would love to play in any given color, just sort of seeing what's going on. An important part of sealed also is what color dual lands you have. And we have a lot of black touching lands. Unfortunately, not a lot of green ones. Green can usually like host a lot of other colors. But I'm liking what I see in green so far, so you could see me just sort of filling in the green portion right there just to see what that looks like. And then a couple like half green cards they're seeming okay. Now white has a couple things I like. It just doesn't have a lot of support for our mana base and is just sort of shallow otherwise. So you could see me looking at black. I like Phyrexian Ragers. I like the removal spell Extinguish the Light. So there's only like 2 notable cards in red, Flowstone Infusion and Lightning Strike. So considering those, but once again, like the mana base is going to dictate some of this. Scanning over blue. Blue has some decent things. I like the Drakes are just solid 3 mana, 2/3 flyers. Those can win games. Frostfist, Defiler, the Tolarian Terror. I'm sort of liking what I'm seeing from blue as I'm scanning through. Maybe like a Sultai base, possibly splashing into like white a little bit. So checking when you see me clicking on the bar graph, I'm checking color breakdown and creature count versus spell count. It just doesn't look like red's going to happen. Now, Solkanar is one I just completely unsure about. Like, there is power level, but there's also high risk because after you get the nice triggers, eventually you have to give it away. Now, if you have a lot of cards like Bone Splinters, then sure, yeah, put it in there. Like, you can sacrifice it once you've gotten all the value, but we have nothing of that sort. And so I'm sort of steering clear of it, especially because our red mana is just not looking very doable based on our dual lands. So still just scanning through what the options might be. Yeah, there are some things in white that I'm intrigued by. And so you could see me here just not quite convinced, or at least wanting to explore options. So I end up just ditching everything I have built and just see theoretically which red cards I would play. And then also pair that with white. The main problem we have here is just the lower end of our curve is just not deep enough. You can see me sort of build it out and realize pretty quickly, yeah, that's just not going to work for like a red-white aggro deck. So still sort of scanning through to see what we have going on. Dive back into green. It really seems like green is sort of where we're going to want to be. Black also seems like, with the Phyrexian Ragers and like the removal spell, unfortunately, like that's about it from black. Like there's not a lot, and it seems like blue is probably the best color to pair with green as like our 2 main colors. So I start filling in some blue cards, and it's tough because some of our most powerful blue cards are double blue, which is going to be tough with our mana base. And this is me fairly new to the format still, and also not like a sealed expert, so trying to navigate as best I can. But this pool is not as straightforward as some of the other ones you might find. Like If you want to win, you want pools where the power's obviously concentrated in a couple colors, But builds like these are interesting because there's a lot of directions you can go in. So really like Defiler Dreams, though its power level decreases significantly if you don't have a lot of blue permanents to cast to actually trigger the card draw mode. It's just sort of a regular flyer otherwise. So conscious of that, especially the double blue mana cost. But eventually come around to it and put it inside the deck. You could see me thinking about it a lot, like keep hovering over it. But like the sort of Frost Giant is pretty nice, but it's also double blue. I'm looking at Urg. Like it's in our colors, but it just doesn't seem like... I mean, it's in our colors, but still hard to cast. It doesn't seem like that great. Essence Scatter and like counter spells are a lot stronger and sealed since games are typically slower. So that's another mark in blue's favor for like this pool right here, because we get Essence Scatter and also the other one that makes a creature if you kick it. Yeah, so still pondering, converging on what we want, but it's just hard to figure out the last couple cards to put in there. Considering splashing Prayer of Binding, it's like the most notable white spell, the most strongest one we have, but white is just not super supported in our mana, though we may be playing it anyway if we're playing like that cat legend. So if we're making that effort to play the cat legend, then we should definitely play Prayer of Binding, because it's probably more powerful than legend in this kind of format. So trimming down the number of basics and adjusting things. And yeah, so go ahead and switch to Mirage basics at this point. And I end up saving it after this. And upon revisiting, you'll see it change briefly right here. Upon revisiting, I make some changes. I neglected to add a basic island earlier, neglected to add Defiler of Dreams. And so make those changes before we jump into the games, because the basic island was necessary because we have that card that searches for basic lands. Initially, I thought it, yeah, right there. It's right there. The Scour the Wilderness. Anyway, we don't have any green mana, but we go ahead and just keep it off the strength of double Drakes right there, and many colors already available. If we ever find a green, our Nishoba Brawler will be quite strong. But just go ahead and toss a Drake on the battlefield to get started. We will need a green source or else we'll be in big trouble eventually. Okay, so they play the Eerie Soulcaller, mill a couple things. So we could see that they're, like us, a multicolored pile, which is, I think you're going to encounter quite a lot in Sealed in this format. We just toss out our other Drake and feeling decent about life. 2/2/3s. Opponent decides they have something to say about that. Lightning Strike one down and clear out an attack for them. And they follow up with Bone Splinter, so they just don't want to mess around with our flyers at all, and plus their creature gives them value from the graveyard, so they're not hung up on that. The question here is, do we run out the Brawler or do we play the ramp spell since we can kick it? End up playing the Brawler because we can hold up the counter spell, possibly snag something. And so this is a pretty juicy target, so I end up kicking Protect the Negotiators to make a 1/1, counter their spell. Feeling decent about that exchange. We go ahead and draw Namada here, holding off the ramp spell because kicking it just gives us a couple 1/1s. Namada seems like it's being more impactful potentially. We get to attack for 5 here. Let's see what happens. Okay, so opponent kicks Terror Sunder. They have an answer. Terror Sunder is an awesome card. I would love... I need to get some copies from my green-black plus paper commander decks. So, just really strong, really flexible removal. Yeah, just play the flyer. once again, prioritizing pressure over like getting the basics out. So opponent plays Tolarian Terror, and that's basically just a brick wall for our little aggro session we were having. Decide to take the time now to kick Scour the Wilderness. So we have them at fairly low life. Maybe our flyer could get there, but then they cast Shalai's Acolyte kicked, so it's a 5/6 flyer. So basically they've secured both the ground and the air against us, and we have an extremely removal light build. Like, we're hoping to mostly just play creature. We don't even have like combat tricks, so we have, it's very straightforward, not kind of the tricky things we have are like counter spells. And then to our horror, we see Danitha enter the battlefield. I think this is my first interaction with Danitha, and did not quite realize the danger we are in. It is an insanely strong card. It preys on decks like ours with very little removal, because it's an absolute nightmare to tangle with in combat. Yeah, so the reason I'm not snapping off a block with that Death Toucher is because it has First Strike, Vigilance, and Lifelink. So already the tables have turned completely in the opponent's favor. We would need to block with a ton of creatures, and they would just be able to slice open combat with the removal spell. So it could have been that we were that desperate that I should have tossed a ton of creatures in front of Danitha, but we were also dying to the big flyer, so tough loss. But opponent had a great deck that was able to stabilize against us. So keep a hand that's once again does not have green, which is not feeling great, especially when we see the Nishoba Brawler. Not only that, but we have Ivy. We could have been laying some damage down early if we had just a forest. Weather Seed Treaty is very strong and sealed. It just gets your colors going, gets you just value, and it's a great card. Now, still short on a forest, but we play our Caves of Koilos to play Phyrexian Rager to hopefully dig towards one. That's tough. So we have 2 tap lands. None of them are green. The opponent is able to ramp into Elfheim Worm, so feeling the pressure already. A 5/4 trample, and they're going to get the next Weather Seed Chapter, which is a pump spell. So they go ahead and pump the sap rolling. And they play Frost Fist Strider. Thankfully we have an Essence Scatter, because that might have just locked up the game. You know, if we didn't have that, we would have made basically, the game would have been basically over already. Alright, thankfully draw a forest. The question is, what do we play? Decide to play the greatest upside. Scout the Wilderness gets us an additional forest to keep unloading our hand, plus the 1/1s to hopefully block the worm. So went with that as opposed to just playing out a single creature. Went with a little more long-term approach there. Okay, so they play Talus, Lookout, send in with the worm. You know, there is a 1 green mana pump spell, so like this is not without risk. But fortunately, we're able to trade with the worm and take care of that threat. And we're also very happy to see that we have a spider to at least rumble in combat with their flyer. We play our Nishoba Brawler, which is a full-powered threat right now, 5/3 trample. Now Snare Spinner, when it blocks flyers, gets +2/+0 until end of turn, so which we were hoping to block, but their Frost Giant is going to make sure that does not happen. Now, we're fortunate to have Ivy as like a backup plan to block their flyer. Not great. We'd rather attack with Ivy, but we're in a desperate situation here. We took so much damage from their aggressive start with the ramping and the trample damage they're able to send our way. But now we have a Death Toucher for the giant and a Ivy to block the flyer, so they will get a card off their flyer dying. So it's not great, but we're just doing what we can to survive at this point. So they ditch Tatiova, which is not great, consider, we see that they play the Gloom Widow and Urborg Lurgoyf, which are incredibly strong at this moment in time. The Gloom Widow is really tough to deal with because it comes back from the graveyard. Well, like, it makes a copy from the graveyard. So we're in trouble, and unfortunately, that 6 toughness on the Lurgoyf means we're going to have to toss 2 creatures in the way to take it down. So it's looking pretty bleak for us. The Gloom Widow has a trample, so that's also like just a really tough threat. So we fall to 1, and it's just looking bleak. You can see by our hand, like, there's not a lot of options we have. The opponent just piles on some more threats, and we are just mega dead. That's how it goes sometimes, though. Next game. So, a pretty horrible start. 0-2 never feels amazing. Thankfully, we have green mana in our opening hand, so we'll have to see if that helps us. Okay, so they play Sten and they name Instant, so they're hoping to discount their instant spells right there. Very happy to see Nishoba Brawler. 2 mana, 3/3 tramples. Amazing on the game. It's only going to get better when we play our next land. So it's looking like there's some sort of blue-white or banned instant sorcery deck. I'm trying to decide whether should attack because they have a decent double block, but they're spooked enough by pump spells, or at least prioritizing their creatures enough just to let it through, which is what we were hoping. Now they play Battlefly. It's like, do we Essence Scatter that? Like, is that worth it? Decide it's just not worth it. It is annoying, but we're not really trading up on mana and spending a whole card to deal with it, so decide to not use Essence Scatter, even though we essentially wasted the mana for that turn. But we're still winning the damage race thanks to our Brawler. I could play a Snapping Drake, which is good on offense and defense in this situation. I was thinking that was going to be an Essence Scatter, but just Resolute Reinforcements. And our mana is coming together nice. Okay, so we hold off their assaults. They're just hanging back for us. Now, they will soon have the ability to pump using Wrath and give their team +1/+1 in Vigilance till end of turn, so they don't have enough mana for it currently, but it's something to be aware of. And because the insect gave Death Touch, we don't send any attackers in. We cast Shali's Acolyte, which outclasses our flyer. I'm trying to figure out what to do. There's a few options here. Decide it's a pretty good turn to use Extinguish the Light, because they don't have the black mana open to activate Death Touch. And almost, yeah, so I just send in with the Drake, and this allows us to hold up Essence Scatter. Hoping to be able to, like, use that mana. And we see Cavalier. We're just trying to clear the skies, so go ahead and Essence Scatter it. Not only that, but we just can't keep holding up 2 mana for, like, the rest of the game. We got things to play. The nice thing about that Essence Scatter is it's going to discount our Tolarian Terror. Okay, so we have Ivy and we have a Drake. Decide to send in the 2 best attackers we have. So they activate Death Touch. And first it looks like they're going to block the Brawler. Then they opt to block the Flyer, which we're okay with now because we have multiple backup Flyers. Okay, so they decide to multiple block down our Brawler, which we're okay with. So it was an interesting. I was expecting a spells heavy deck from the opponent based on their opening, but they have a very creature heavy deck. I don't know if we've seen any spells from them yet, or at least that's the half of the deck that they drew in this game. Okay, so they play the Beast Caller. They play another Battlefly. Now they're tapped out of black mana here, so our Drake will be able to get in. Now decide with that one last card that they have not cast up, thinking that it could be something good that they're holding on to. And it is. It's one of those frosty giants, the Strider. So instead of deploying threats that turn, decided it was worth it to try and snipe whatever they had going on. And Dominaria Terror is only 3 mana here. It feels great. It's a very strong card in this format and sealed. I mean, it's just really difficult to deal with its ward. And there's Wrath activating his ability there to give the team vigilance. And they mostly do it just to get the Battlefly in for some extra damage. And they can still hold it up for Death Touch. But they're out of resources, and we still have things going, especially like Ivy. We'd like the skies to be clear, so we want the Battlefly out of there. So but we're feeling pretty good. We got a Drake, Ivy, a few creatures. Like, it's looking like, depending, you know, if they don't draw enough next turn, we can just swarm them. Now with the strength of Wrath though, like, they're honestly not too far away from like stabilizing, because that vigilance activation, you know, could punish us, but opponent is basically, you know, they've seen that they can't get through what we're having. They can't deal with the flyers essentially, so they give us the old good game and we send in with the team. Next game. So a good hand, we have our counter spells, we have our main colors of mana. We're just gonna need more lands. So another Battlefly Swarm. We've battled a lot of those flies lately, so nothing else to do but keep up our counter spells here. Well, just Essence Scatter at this point. The Protect the Negotiators won't do anything at this moment in time. So decided to run out the Phyrexian Rager, just keep the cards flowing, hopefully. Okay, we could draw the Root Walla. Root Walla is a solid little creature with that, you know, late game relevance by pumping it with 4 mana to get that domain boost. Okay, so they send him with the fly, and they play the Eerie Soul Render. Just checking out what they milled to try and see what they have going on. Opt to play the Mana Dork here to try and increase options for next turn. And want to block the Soul Render. Like, they get value from it being in the graveyard, but it's honestly dealing a lot. It can deal a lot of damage to us. Okay, so they play the Yavimaya, I think, Interloper. It's very strong. We play our Root Walla. Play our tap land. And here, it's nice because we can hold off both counter spells here. So opponent plays a Mountain. They play Lagomos. And because it costs more mana, and because we have the mana up for it, decide to use Protect the Negotiators here. Even though it's a more general counter spell, it just costs more to hold it up, especially with Kicker. So use it to take care of Lagomos. That could just be annoying for us to deal with the 2-1 hasty tramples each turn. Draw our Forest. And decide it's a decent time to kick Pixie Illusionist. Gets us a big flyer, and we can still hold up Essence Scatter. Crucially, so send in with the Soldier. Right, they fall to 19. They send in with the Battlefly. They play the Elfheim Worm. Very juicy Essence Scatter target. Very happily will counter that. Okay, I'm very happy to see our Cat Legend. Unless dealt with, that's going to be a big problem for our opponent. And yeah, so they have the Terra Sunder. Once again, making opponents in our appearance in our opponent's decks. Still need to get that from my commander decks. All right, so we have prayer. We drew Prayer Binding, which is one of the strongest cards in our deck because it can just answer any nasty thing the opponent plays. Go ahead and grab the plains just to make sure we don't lose out on any white sources by losing our mana dork. So very aggressive attack from the flyer here. You think they'd want to hold it back on, Death Touch mode. But then they play the Elder Dragon War, very strong saga, and annihilate a bunch of creatures with it. Thankfully, we still have our 3/3 flyer. And thinking about Prayer Binding, but just, might as well wait and use it on the dragon token at the end. I guess the argument for doing it earlier is to deny them any card selection. But they play the Bone Rattle creature, and even though they could have brought back something more exotic, they bring back the fly because of the Death Touch. They know they can't rumble with the Tolarian Terror in combat. So I thought about this for a while and ended up using Prayer Binding on the Battlefly, which feels weird because it's just it's a 1-mana creature, but this opens up a very clean attack right here. They have no good blocks, puts them to 3. And, they are getting the dragon this turn, so we want to have a clean attack in the air, but it felt like a good time to press the advantage right there, even though it's a strange target. And so, yes, they fire up the activation on the Soul Rendered. They get Rada to hand. They send it with the 4/4, which is a little aggro, but I like it from them because they need to end the game somehow. And they have the wall to block. Basically, if we had a removal spell, they lose anyway. So, I like that attack from them. Now we have a second flyer. The opponent plays Rada. And so it's down to the wire. A removal spell from either of us could take care of it. So another keen attack from the opponent right here. Definitely want to attack there because we were not about to lose both our flyers. And thankfully we draw our Broken Wings, which can just shoot down their flyer and lock up this game for us. And I don't think we want to copy it with Ivy. I think that would be a problem. But yeah, that was a very clutch Broken Wings right there to lock up this game for us. Well, it feels good to win, I'll tell you that much. Sometimes forget how it feels, depending how things are going. We're starting off this game with the Pixie Illusionist. If we draw enough lands, it's going to help Star Cat Legend and maybe some other things we have, so not unhappy about that. Phyrexian Missionary. The Phyrexian Missionary could be a problem. Just 2/3 lifelink is just so good. So they attack in, they're always going to attack here so they can at least gain the life. And if they have a trick, they kill our creature, but I knew that was a risk, decided to take it, and yeah, they had the trick, so. It doesn't seem like the end of the world. We have Namada. Let's see what happens. Okay, so go ahead and attack the pole. Let's see what happens. No blocks. Okay, so far so good. Now it is tough trying to race a life linker. We're honestly not coming out that far ahead against it. Okay, so did not cast anything. Sad to see our Essence Scatter go to waste there. Would have loved to snag something and just stay ahead on tempo. But it seems like a very good turn to kick Phyrexian Espionage. But the opponent has Prayer Binding just to lock up our Namada. So we draw some more lands, which is okay. We'll need some spells eventually, but our Pixie's going to help cast our Cat Legend soon. And the Broken Wings has a Destroy Enchantment mode on it. But then the opponent plays I can't quite read it, but it's 2/4 that when it hits has sort of like an Ophidian card selection effect based on domain. So it's a very nasty creature, and so I make a pretty greedy play here. I want to kill their 2/4 flyer. But I try and do it this way by getting back Namada and double blocking. This is like a high risk, high reward play right here. Maybe should have just taken a safer play and just directly destroyed the flyer and left Namada under the enchantment. But, you know, went for the higher upside and get incredibly punished here. Tear Asunder. Incredibly good for our opponents once again, and takes out our Namada, and we lose our Pixie in the aftermath, and now we can't even cast our Cat Legend because the Pixie's gone. So that was basically went as poorly as possible. And yeah, I don't know, that's essentially the play of the game right there. The opponent kicking Tear Asunder to remove our Namada and just ripping apart our double block. And so now the card advantage train starts. You know, what can men do against such reckless card advantage is the question. But we draw, you know, we're fighting the good fight, but just reeling from that, I guess you can call it a mistake, but it was a gamble at the very least. If we would have just destroyed their flyer directly, might have changed everything. But we get one block out of our Drake, but then a Meteorite takes it down, and it's just looking grim because we're sort of flooding out. We can't even attack on the ground because they have a lifelinker and like will just race us very easily. So it's looking very grim for us. And because the opponent has such high domain, they're getting like really good card selection off their flyer. So we finally get to cash in our Essence Scatter to take care of a really nasty kicked Angel. But with the Tolarian Terror, we can finally attack in with our Nishiba Brawler because we have a blocker for their Phyrexian Missionary. But it's felt like the game's been slipping away the whole time, and now they have a Mountain. So you get to take the best card of the top 5, which is incredibly strong. They play Timeless Lotus, which doesn't do a whole lot, but they don't need it at this point in time to do a whole lot against us. We're in big trouble. So we're able to send in a pretty big attack there, knock them down to 10, because we have a backup Nishoba Brawler to block their Phyrexian Missionary. So we're hanging in there, but the opponent is getting a combination of card advantage and card selection. And this is the backbreaker right here. Kicked Wrath to phase out both their creatures, annihilate all of ours, and then just whammy us with the Outrider. So we take one more look to see what Phyrexian Rager can find for us. But with how many cards, the opponent basically looked through the whole deck and picked the best like 5 cards over the course of the game. So that ends our run. So that was a little tough. Ended up 2-3, but that's how it goes sometimes. Anyway, thank you for watching.